The Rakshasa. Anatomy of a cosmic horror. In the shadowed corners of human imagination, where fear takes form and nightmares walk the earth, there exist beings of profound terror and complexity. They are the echoes of our deepest anxieties, the architects of chaos, and the monstrous figures that haunt the ancient tales of gods and heroes. From the frost-bitten peaks of Scandinavia to the sun-scorched deserts of the Near East, every culture has its demons. But in the vast cyclical expanse of Hindu cosmology, there exists a class of entities so powerful, so multifaceted, and so terrifying, they stand in a category all their own. They are not mere goblins or fiends. They are a race unto themselves, mighty warriors, master illusionists, and insatiable cannibals. They are the horrors that fly in the deepening twilight, the ghouls that feast on the battlefield's carnage, and the sovereigns of splendid demoniacal kingdoms. They are the Rakshasas. Welcome to the Eldritch Codex. Today we journey into the heart of South Asian antiquity to confront the shape-shifting nightmares of Hindu mythology. We will uncover their primordial origins, born from the very breath of a god. We will witness their awesome and dreadful powers, capable of bending reality itself. And we will delve into the epic tragedies they wrought, tales of obsession, vengeance, and cosmic warfare that have shaped one of the world's oldest spiritual traditions. For the Rakshasa is more than just a monster. It is a symbol of unchecked ambition, of the darkness that lurks within power, and the eternal brutal struggle between order and chaos. This is not a simple story of good versus evil, but a grand operatic saga of fallen guardians, tragic kings, and the profound horror that arises when beings of immense power are consumed by their most monstrous desires. Prepare yourselves, as we unlock the secrets of the Rakshasa. To understand the birth of a shadow, we must first understand the nature of the light that casts it. Our story does not begin in darkness, but in an age of unimaginable perfection. Hindu cosmology does not measure time in a straight line, but in vast sweeping cycles known as kalpas or days of Brahma. Each of these cosmic days is divided into 4 great epochs or yugas, and the first of these is the Satya Yuga, the age of truth. Imagine an era where Dharma, the universal law of righteousness, stood firm and unassailable, like a great bull on all 4 of its legs. Truth was the very air that mortals and gods breathed. Humanity was noble, gigantic in stature, their lives stretching for millennia, their hearts untainted by malice or greed. The very earth itself resonated with this purity, yielding its bounty without toil. There was no need for temples, for the divine was present in every atom of creation. This was the world as envisioned by its architect, the great 4-faced god Brahma, the creator. For countless eons, Brahma had poured his divine essence into the act of creation. From his mind he had conceived the Devas, the shining gods of light and order who governed the cosmos. From his body, he had brought forth the sages, the Prajapatis, progenitors of all life. He spun galaxies from his thoughts and populated them with beings of staggering diversity. It was an act of supreme selfless artistry, a cosmic exhale of being into the great void of non-being. But creation, even for a god, is an exhausting act. After an eternity of this cosmic labor, as the glorious Satya Yuga began its slow, inevitable decline towards the next lesser age, a profound weariness settled upon the creator. It was not a mortal fatigue, but a divine exhaustion, a draining of the very will that held universes in place. The unceasing hum of existence, which he had authored, now became a dissonant drone in his consciousness. Brahma, the source of all, sought a moment of reprieve. He sought stillness. He sought sleep. In the silent heart of the cosmos, upon the great lotus that blooms from the navel of the sleeping Vishnu, Brahma the creator closed his eyes. His 4 faces, which had gazed upon the boundless horizons of his work, turned inward. His divine consciousness, which had orchestrated the dance of stars, began to recede. And as he drifted into a divine slumber, he sighed. It was a sigh that was not of air but of pure being. It was an exhalation of cosmic fatigue, a release of the tension built over eons of maintaining order and light. And within this divine breath, something new was given form. It was not born of his focused mind, as the Devas had been. It was not born of his deliberate will, as humanity had been. It was an accidental creation, a spontaneous generation born from the shadow side of a god's weariness, from the tamas, the quality of darkness and inertia, that had momentarily clouded his divine nature. From the breath of the sleeping god they coalesced. At first they were formless mere whispers of shadow and vacuum. They unfurled into the void like plumes of black smoke, their shapes indistinct and fluid. They were not yet creatures of flesh and bone, but of pure untempered impulse. And the first impulse they felt, the very first spark of consciousness that ignited within their being, was hunger. It was not the hunger of an empty stomach. It was a metaphysical craving, a deep, gnawing void in their very essence, a need to consume, to absorb, to fill the emptiness from which they were born. Their nascent senses, raw and unfiltered, detected the most potent source of life and energy in the cosmos, their own slumbering father Brahma. Like newborn predators, they turned upon their creator. Their shadowy forms swarmed towards the great lotus throne, their silent, hungry mouths agape. They were instinct incarnate, the universe's chaotic antibodies rising up against the source of its order. The serenity of Brahma's slumber was shattered. He awoke with a start, not to the harmonious hymns of his Deva children, but to a terrifying vision. His newest creations, born from his own being, were poised to devour him. A primal fear gripped the creator, a terror so profound it shook the foundations of reality. In that moment of pure desperation, a single powerful word erupted from his divine throat, a plea that echoed through the empty spaces between worlds. Rakshasa. It is a word of Sanskrit meaning, "Protect me." This desperate cry became their christening. The beings of shadow, born of hunger and chaos, now had a name. They were the Rakshasas, the ones from whom protection was needed. Their very identity was forged in that moment of divine terror, forever branding them as a threat to the cosmic order from which they sprang. The cry of a creator god does not go unanswered. From the cosmic ocean below, Vishnu, the preserver, whose eternal slumber provides the very ground of being for Brahma's creation, was stirred. He is the ultimate guardian of Dharma, the force of balance and preservation. Seeing the plight of the Creator, Vishnu intervened. He did not destroy these new beings, for they were now a part of creation, a part of the cosmic fabric, but he banished them. He cast them down from the highest planes of existence, away from the celestial realms of the gods. He exiled them to the terrestrial plane, to walk the earth among mortals, to inhabit the shadowed places, the deep forests, the lonely mountains, and the coming darkness of night. And so the Rakshasas were given their domain, the world of mortals. They were cursed to forever carry the insatiable hunger of their birth, a hunger that would soon find its focus on the flesh of humanity. This is their first and most terrible origin, children of a god's exhaustion, named by a god's fear, and eternally defined by their desire to consume the very order that created them. It is a genesis of profound tragedy, for they are divine by lineage, yet monstrous by nature, forever antagonists in a drama they did not ask to join. But as with all great myths, the river of truth often splits into many streams, each reflecting a different facet of a complex reality. The Puranas, the sacred encyclopedias of Hindu lore, offer another, equally potent origin story for the Rakshasas. This tale is not one of accidental creation, but of a deliberate purpose given, and then horrifically corrupted. In another cycle of creation, after Brahma had brought forth the heavens and the earth, he turned his attention to the primordial waters. In Hindu thought, water or appa is not merely a substance. It is the womb of life, the source of all potential, a sacred element from which all things emerge. Brahma understood that these life-giving waters needed guardians, powerful beings who could safeguard their purity, and ensure the flow of life throughout the cosmos. From his divine energy he brought forth a new race of powerful spirits. They were strong, intelligent, and possessed of great potential. He gathered them before him and looked upon them, his new, purposeful creations. But they, like all new beings, were beset by primal needs. They felt hunger and thirst, and they approached their Creator for guidance on how to sustain themselves. Here Brahma did not simply give a command. He offered a choice, a foundational test that would define their very essence and divide them into two distinct peoples. He looked upon them and declared that some among them were to become the guardians of the sacred waters. But he also posed a question of intent. What would be their guiding principle? Some of the spirits stepped forward and made a solemn vow. Rakshasa, they declared, using that same fateful word. But here its meaning was inverted. It was not a plea for protection but a promise to protect. We will protect, they swore. These beings would become the Rakshasas. Others, however, answered with a different impulse. Overcome by their own appetites, they declared, Yakshama, meaning, we will eat, or we will consume. These beings would become the Yakshas, a related but distinct class of nature spirits, often associated with the treasures of the earth, guardians of wealth, forests, and hidden groves, beings who were also powerful and dangerous, but driven by a different core principle. In this telling, the Rakshasas begin not as monsters, but as guardians. They are the sworn protectors of the most vital element of life. Their genesis is a noble one, rooted in a sacred duty. And this makes their subsequent fall all the more terrifying and tragic. How did this corruption happen? The texts do not give a single event, but suggest a slow, insidious decay over the ages. The act of protection is a powerful one. To be a guardian is to wield authority. A shepherd protects his flock, but he also controls it. A king protects his people, but he also rules them. The Rakshasas' duty to protect the waters became a possessive, jealous dominion. They began to see the waters not as a sacred trust to be shared, but as their exclusive property. Their protective instinct, once noble, festered into a violent paranoia. Any who approached the waters, be they mortal, sage, or even a lesser god, were seen not as pilgrims seeking life, but as trespassers to be repelled. Their role as guardians twisted into that of gatekeepers, and then into that of tyrants. Their righteous duty became a justification for violence. And their hunger, once a simple need, became intertwined with this newfound aggression. They began to see consuming those who threatened their domain as a part of their protective duty. This warped logic transformed them from guardians into predators. The flesh of trespassers became their sustenance. Their sacred vow of Rakshasa became a battle cry they screamed as they fell upon their victims. Over the eons, they forgot the original meaning of their pledge and remembered only the violence that had come to define it. They became cannibals, Kravyads, the flesh-eaters. They became the very defilers of the life they had sworn to protect. This dual origin provides the terrifying foundation for everything the Rakshasa is. From the first story, they inherit a nature of chaos, a form born of shadow, and an innate antagonism towards the divine order. From the second, they inherit a legacy of fallen nobility, a corrupted purpose, and a perversion of dharma. They are not mindless beasts. They are failed guardians. They are not alien invaders from some hell realm. They are a branch of the cosmic family, as divine in origin as the gods they fight, but twisted by their choices into a force of profound horror. This is the essential tragedy of the Rakshasa. They understand the cosmic laws of right and wrong, for they were born to uphold them. But they choose to subvert these laws for their own power, pleasure, and insatiable appetite. This makes them more than mere monsters. It makes them philosophical horrors, living embodiments of that harmeth force of unrighteousness. They are a dark mirror held up to the very concepts of duty and power, a timeless warning that the line between a guardian and a tyrant is terrifyingly thin, and that the noblest of intentions, when corrupted by pride and hunger, can give birth to the most unspeakable evil. Thus the stage was set. Cast down to earth, armed with the divine lineage, and cursed with the corrupted purpose, the Rakshasas began their long and bloody history as the great antagonists of gods and mortals. Their story was only just beginning, and their monstrous powers were yet to be fully unleashed upon a world that would learn to fear the coming of twilight. We have witnessed their genesis, born from the breath of a weary god and the corruption of a sacred vow. We have seen them cast down from the celestial planes, exiled to the world of mortals, their very name a byword for terror. But to truly comprehend the shadow they cast across the ages, we must move beyond their origins and dare to look upon their form. We must dissect their powers, catalog their hungers, and understand the terrifying machinery of their malice. So what is it to stand before such a being? What does a hero face when he draws his sword not against a mortal foe, but against a Rakshasa? It is to face an enemy for whom the laws of physics are a passing suggestion, for whom the sanctity of the flesh is an invitation to a feast, and for whom the very fabric of perceived reality is the canvas upon which they paint their terrifying masterpieces. This is the anatomy of a nightmare, a study of the dreadful abilities that make the Rakshasa one of the most formidable and complete monsters in all of world mythology. First and most famously, we must confront their most insidious and iconic power, Kamarupa. This is a Sanskrit term that translates to form at will. It is the power of metamorphosis, of shapeshifting, but to call it mere shapeshifting is to describe a hurricane as a mild breeze. The Kamarupa of a Rakshasa is not a clumsy, partial transformation. It is a total and seamless reinvention of their physical being. Imagine a lonely traveler, lost in a deep wood as twilight bleeds across the sky. He sees a light ahead, a hermitage, and an old, benevolent sage offers him shelter. The sage speaks of wisdom and the gods, putting the traveler at ease, only revealing his true, monstrous form when the man is asleep and helpless. This is the power of the Rakshasa. Imagine a king on a hunt, who becomes separated from his party. He stumbles upon a woman of such intoxicating, celestial beauty that he is instantly smitten. He takes her back to his palace as his queen, never knowing that her lovely smiles hide a ravenous hunger, and that his kingdom is now ruled by a Rakshasi, a female demon who will slowly drain the life from him and his court. This is the power of the Rakshasa. They can assume the form of any creature, a monstrous, snarling beast to inspire terror, a fearsome boar or a majestic lion to crush their enemies. Or, most deceitfully, they can become a harmless animal, an object of pity or desire, a tool to manipulate the emotions of their prey. In the great epic of the Ramayana, this very power sets the stage for its central tragedy. The hero Rama lived in exile with his divine wife Sita. To abduct her, the demon king Ravana did not attack directly. Instead, he commanded his uncle, the Rakshasa Maricha, to use his power of Kamarupa. Maricha transformed himself into a golden deer, an animal of magical, impossible beauty, with silver spots and horns like polished gems. Sita, enchanted by the creature, begged Rama to capture it for her. Lured away by this beautiful illusion, Rama left his wife vulnerable. The golden deer was a lie, a living trap, and its beautiful form was the key that unlocked the gates to catastrophe. This ability makes the Rakshasa the ultimate infiltrator. They are the spies of the mythological world, the perfect assassins. They can walk through the heart of an enemy encampment wearing a trusted friend's face. They can sow dissent, paranoia, and confusion, turning allies against one another before a single blow is struck in open combat. To face a Rakshasa is to be plunged into a state of absolute uncertainty, where the beautiful is suspect, the harmless is a threat, and the very ground of trust upon which a society is built crumbles into dust. This profound ability to alter their physical form is but an outward expression of a deeper, more terrifying metaphysical power. For the Rakshasas are not just shapeshifters, they are the grand masters of Maya. Maya is one of the most profound and complex concepts in Hindu philosophy. On one level, it means illusion, magic, or deceit. But on a cosmic scale, Maya is the very power that creates the illusion of the material world itself, the veil of perceived reality that obscures the ultimate, singular truth of Brahman, or the divine ground of all being. While the gods may wield Maya to orchestrate the cosmic play, the Rakshasas wield it as a weapon. They are illusionists of the highest order, reality benders who fight not just on the physical plane, but on the battlefield of the mind. What does this mean for a hero who confronts them? It means the very environment of the battle becomes a weapon. A Rakshasa can make a lush forest appear as a barren desert, luring their enemies to die of thirst. They can conjure vast, terrifying Miragesfantum armies charging from the horizon, complete with the clash of steel and the cries of the dying, causing an army to break ranks and flee from an enemy that does not exist. They can make the sky appear as the ground, and the ground as the sky, disorienting and terrifying their foes. The Rakshasa Indrajit, son of Ravana, was the supreme master of Maya. He could render himself and his entire chariot invisible, raining down celestial weapons upon Rama's army from an unseen position, a phantom of death against whom no defense was possible. This power of illusion extends to necromancy and psychological warfare. A Rakshasa can conjure a phantom effigy of a beloved leader, and then strike him down in full view of his troops, shattering their morale. They can create illusory visions of a hero's loved ones being tortured, seeking to break his spirit with grief and rage. They fight with fear as their primary tool, understanding that a warrior defeated in his own mind is already dead. To battle a Rakshasa is to enter a waking nightmare, a hallucinatory state where your senses are your worst enemies. You cannot trust what you see, what you hear, or even what you feel. The path beneath your feet may be an illusion hiding a chasm. The comrade fighting beside you may be a demon in disguise. The victory you think you have won may be a prelude to a devastating ambush. The mastery of Maya makes the Rakshasa a horror that transcends the physical, striking at the very sanity of its opponents. But should a hero manage to see through the illusions, should they break the spell of Maya, they are not rewarded with victory. They are punished with the truth. For when a Rakshasa sheds its disguise, what is revealed is a horror of flesh and fury, a being whose natural form is a monument to grotesque power. While their forms are fluid, their true or common appearance as described in the ancient texts is the stuff of nightmares. They are often depicted as giants of terrifying size, with skin the color of a dark thundercloud or the putrid green of a stagnant swamp. Their bodies are powerful but misshapen, their muscles knotted and pulsing with a black malevolent ichor. From their mouths jet fearsome tusks, sometimes curved and yellowed like ancient ivory, other times sharp and metallic like scythes. Their fingernails are not nails at all, but vicious claws sharp as razors, often stained with the blood of their last meal. And their eyes are the most terrible feature of all. They glow in the dark with a malevolent, inner light, like dying coals or baleful embers, promising nothing but pain and annihilation. Their hair is often coarse and matted, the color of flame or rust, and their voices are not human. A Rakshasa's laugh is the sound of grinding stone, and their roar is said to be powerful enough to splinter rock and send birds falling dead from the sky. They are the embodiment of raw, brute force, a physical manifestation of chaos and violence. Their strength is as prodigious as their size. A Rakshasa can uproot ancient trees and use them as clubs. They can hurl boulders the size of chariots, sweat aside elephants as if they were insects, and wrestle with the sons of gods. Bhima, the Pandava hero of the Mahabharata, known for having the strength of 10,000 elephants, found his equal in battle with Rakshasas like Hidimba and Bakasura. This immense physical power, a dark inheritance from their divine origins, makes them devastating shock troops and terrifying individual combatants. They are most powerful in the liminal hours, during twilight and especially after the sun has set. The darkness is their natural element. The night empowers them, cloaks them, and fills them with a ferocious energy. The rising of the sun, a symbol of dharma, light and cosmic order, is their bane. For many Rakshasas, the first rays of dawn are a weakening force, a power that can dispel their darkest illusions and sap their monstrous strength, forcing them to retreat to their shadowed lairs, deep caves, remote mountaintops, or desolate forests. Yet, of all their terrifying attributes, one trait more than any other has seared the Rakshasa into the human psyche as the ultimate monster. It is a trait that speaks to our most primal fears of being hunted, of being prey. It is their insatiable, all-consuming appetite. Rakshasas are often known by another name, Kravyats. The word means simply, flesh-eaters. They are cannibals of the most voracious kind. Human flesh is their greatest delicacy, and their senses are so attuned to it that some legends claim they can smell the scent of a human from leagues away. They do not hunt merely for sustenance. They hunt for sport and for pleasure, delighting in the terror of their victims. They haunt lonely roads waiting for travelers to pass. They desecrate hermitages and places of worship, slaughtering sages at their prayers and devouring them whole. Cremation grounds are their favorite haunts, where they dig up the newly dead for a ghastly feast, their monstrous forms silhouetted against the funeral pyres. But their grandest banquets are the battlefields of men. When a great war is fought, the Rakshasas watch from the skies with gleeful anticipation. As soon as night falls on the field of carnage, they descend. They are the ghouls of the battlefield, the living vultures who feast not just on the dead, but on the wounded and the dying. The epic texts describe horrific scenes of Rakshasas striding through the gore, their laughter mixing with the groans of dying heroes, as they crack bones to suck the marrow and tear limbs from torsos. This turns every war into not just a human tragedy, but a monstrous abattoir, a feeding ground for the horrors that lurk in the dark. This unholy hunger is a direct link back to their origin. Born from a god's fatigue and a metaphysical craving, their need to consume is a core part of their being. It represents their nature as a force of chaos and anti-order. Where civilization builds, the Rakshasa devours. Where life flourishes, the Rakshasa consumes. They are a living embodiment of entropy, the force that breaks down complex structures into their component parts. At this point, it would be easy to dismiss the Rakshasa as a simple brutish monstera creature of instinct and appetite, a mindless engine of destruction. But this would be the gravest mistake one could make. It would be to underestimate the most dangerous tool in their entire arsenal, their mind. Many Rakshasas, particularly those of high birth like the royalty of Lanka, are depicted as beings of profound intelligence, culture, and learning. They are not slobbering beasts. They are scholars, poets, architects, and brilliant strategists. Ravana, their greatest king, was a master of the Vedas, the most sacred Hindu scriptures, and a musician of such divine skill that he could please the gods with his songs. His son Indrajit was a peerless warrior not only for his mastery of illusion, but because he had mastered the use of the most powerful celestial weapons, a feat that required immense discipline and knowledge. This is what makes the Rakshasa a truly complete horror. It is the terrifying synthesis of brute force and cunning intellect. It is a beast that can quote sacred philosophy to you one moment, and then disembowel you with its claws the next. Their evil is not born of ignorance. It is a conscious, deliberate choice. They understand dharma, the law of righteousness, perfectly. They simply choose to defy it. They twist logic and scripture to justify their atrocities, using their intelligence to architect ever more elaborate and devastating forms of evil. This combination of traits, the power to deceive reality, the monstrous strength to shatter mountains, the profane hunger to devour flesh, and the sharp intellect to orchestrate it all makes the Rakshasa a foe without equal. They attack the body, the mind, and the spirit simultaneously. They are the shape-shifting nightmare that undermines trust, the phantom illusion that shatters sanity, the roaring behemoth that crushes bone, and the cruel scholar that mocks morality. They are the complete package of mythological terror, an ancient and enduring anatomy of the perfect nightmare. Of all the Rakshasas to ever stride across the blood-soaked pages of myth, one name looms largest, a figure of such epic grandeur and villainy that his story has been told and retold for millennia. His effigy burned in festivals, his name a synonym for the ultimate antagonist. He is the 10-headed, 20-armed king of the island fortress of Lanka, a scholar of unparalleled genius, a warrior who made the gods tremble, a devout follower of the great god Shiva, and the dark, blazing sun around which the entire epic of the Ramayana revolves. His name is Ravana, and his tale is not merely one of evil, but a profound and devastating tragedy of hubris, a story that explores how the brightest light can cast the darkest shadow. To understand Ravana is to understand paradox. He was not born a simple monster from some forgotten pit of darkness. He was born of a lineage that destined him for both greatness and conflict. His father was the great Brahmin sage Vishrava, a son of the creator god Brahma himself, bestowing upon Ravana a heritage of profound intellect, wisdom, and divine connection. His mother, however, was the Rakshasi princess Kaikasi, who, desiring a powerful son, had seduced the sage. From her, Ravana inherited the defining traits of the Rakshasa race: fierce ambition, immense physical power, and a capacity for boundless rage. He was born at the confluence of two powerful streams, the sacred knowledge of the Brahmins and the aggressive, chaotic energy of the Rakshasas. This duality would define every moment of his life and ultimately seal his doom. From his youth, Ravana was driven by a single all-consuming fire: the desire for ultimate power. He saw the Devas, the celestial gods, ruling the heavens from their golden city, and he coveted their authority. He saw his half-brother, Kabura, the god of wealth, ruling the magnificent island of Lanka, and he burned with envy. He knew that in this cosmos supreme power was not simply seized. It was earned, often through acts of extreme asceticism known as tapasya. And so, with his brothers Kumbhakarna and Vibhishana, Ravana embarked on a penance of such severity that it defied imagination. He journeyed to the forests, and for 10,000 years, he engaged in the most extreme forms of self-mortification. He stood on one leg, surrounded by 5 fires, 4 blazing around him, and the scorching sun above, meditating upon the creator Brahma. His will was a thing of iron, his focus absolute. To demonstrate the depth of his resolve, he constructed a great sacrificial fire. And at the end of the first 1,000 years of his penance, he took a sword, severed one of his own 10 heads, and offered it into the flames as a sacrifice. For 9,000 more years he continued, and every 1,000 years, another head was offered, another piece of himself sacrificed to his unyielding ambition. The cosmos itself watched in awe at this display of sheer will. Just as he was about to sever his 10th and final head, prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, a pleased and concerned Brahma manifested before him, the sacrificial fire paling in the light of the Creator's presence. He bid Ravana to stop, and to ask for any boon he desired. Here, in this pivotal moment, Ravana's fatal flaw, his monumental arrogance, his ahamkara, was laid bare. He asked for the ultimate gift, absolute immortality and invincibility, but he framed his request with contemptuous pride. He asked for immunity from all beings he considered a threat, from Devas and Asuras, from Gandharvas and Yakshas, from serpents and from all manner of powerful spirits. He asked for protection from any being of divine or demonic power. But in his list he made a catastrophic omission. He did not ask for protection from mortals, from men or from the apes and monkeys of the forest, for he considered them so weak, so utterly beneath his notice, that the very idea of them posing a threat was laughable. Brahma, bound by the rules of cosmic boons, granted his wish exactly as it was asked. Armed with this nigh invincibility, Ravana became a force of nature. His first act was to march upon Lanka. He violently deposed his half-brother Kabura and seized the Golden Island Kingdom for himself, along with Kabura's flying chariot, the magnificent Pushpaka Vimana. Under Ravana's rule, Lanka became a fortress of impossible splendor, a city of gold and jewels that was said to burn so brightly it needed no sun. It was a city of power, art, and science, but it was a power built on tyranny, a kingdom ruled by a Rakshasa whose ambition was now truly limitless. He became the scourge of the three worlds. He waged war upon the Devas, defeating their king Indra and subjugating the celestial realms. He tormented sages in their hermitages, disrupting their sacrifices and mocking their piety. He was a tyrant, yes, but he was never a simple one. He was a master of the 64 arts, a profound scholar of the Vedas, and an author of works on medicine and astrology. And he was, in his own way, a being of profound devotion. His chosen deity was the great god Shiva, the destroyer, the ultimate ascetic. Ravana's devotion to Shiva was as extreme and passionate as his ambition. In a famous tale of breathtaking arrogance and piety, Ravana traveled to the Himalayas and attempted to uproot Mount Kailash, the sacred abode of Shiva, to move it to Lanka for his mother. As he began to lift the mountain with his 20 mighty arms, a displeased Shiva simply pressed down with his big toe, trapping Ravana beneath the immense weight of the peak. Pinned and crushed but undeterred, Ravana remained trapped for 1,000 years. To please the god whose home he had tried to steal, he tore off one of his own arms to fashion it into the neck of a lute, the veena, and used his own sinews as strings. From his own body, he created an instrument, and for 1,000 years, he sang a hymn of such power and beauty, the Shiva Tandava Stotram, that the sound of his devotion echoed through the heavens. Finally, a pleased Shiva appeared, released him, and gifted him the Chandrahas, an indestructible divine sword. This is the central paradox of Ravana, a being capable of such profound devotion and artistic genius, who was also a cruel tyrant and a monster. He was the scholar king, the demon sage, a figure of immense light and equally immense darkness. For years he ruled unchallenged, his power absolute, his pride swelling with every victory until it blotted out the sun. He believed himself to be the master of his own destiny, the supreme power in the universe. He was wrong. His downfall would not come from a god or a demon, but from the one creature he had dismissed as insignificant, a man. And it would be triggered not by a desire for power, but by a simple obsessive desire for a woman. The catalyst for his ruin began with a brutal encounter in a forest far from Lanka. His Rakshasi sister Surpanaka had been mutilated by the exiled prince of Ayodhya, Lakshmana, after she had tried to attack his brother's wife. Fleeing to Lanka, Surpanaka stoked the embers of her brother's pride, not only by showing him her disfigured face, but by giving him a rapturous, detailed description of the woman she held responsible, Sita, the wife of the Prince Rama. She described Sita's beauty as otherworldly, a divine perfection walking the earth. A spark was lit in Ravana's mind. At first it was curiosity, then interest, then it blossomed into a raging fire of obsessive lust or kama. The thought of this woman, the wife of a mere mortal exile, possessing such beauty, became an affront to his ego. Such a jewel, he believed, did not belong in a forest hermitage. It belonged in his palace in Lanka. It belonged to him. This obsession, born of pride and desire, would be the undoing of everything he had built. Blinded by his need to possess Sita, he devised a plan of pure Rakshasa cunning. He commanded his uncle, the shape-shifting Maricha, to assist him. Maricha, who had faced Rama's power before, begged Ravana to abandon this path, warning him that it would lead to certain destruction. But Ravana, in his arrogance, would not be swayed. He threatened Maricha with death, forcing his compliance. Following Ravana's command, Maricha transformed himself into a magical golden deer of impossible beauty and pranced near Rama and Sita's dwelling. As planned, Sita was enchanted and begged Rama to capture it. Rama, despite his misgivings, agreed, leaving his brother Lakshmana to guard her. He pursued the deer deep into the forest. Finally, realizing it was a deception, Rama shot the deer with an arrow. As he died, Maricha reverted to his Rakshasa form and, mimicking Rama's voice, cried out for help, shouting Sita's and Lakshmana's names. Hearing the cry, Sita panicked and insisted that Lakshmana go to his brother's aid. Lakshmana, bound by duty, reluctantly agreed, but not before drawing a protective line around the Katahaya. Lakshmana reckoned that no unclean being could cross. Now the stage was set. With the hermitage unguarded, Ravana made his move. He approached, not in his monstrous form, but disguised as a wandering holy man, a sannyasi leaning on a staff and asking for alms. Sita, bound by the sacred duty of hospitality, stepped forward to offer him food. From behind the safety of the line, she politely conversed with the sage, who began to praise her beauty and question why one such as her was living in the squalor of the forest. He revealed his true identity as Ravana, king of Lanka, and demanded she renounce her mortal husband and become his queen. When Sita, horrified, furiously rejected him, Ravana's patience shattered. His disguise dissolved. In its place stood the Rakshasa king in all his terrifying glory. His 10 heads multiplied, each filled with rage. His 20 arms flexed with power. He was a vision of demonic majesty and fury. He broke the magical protection of the cottage with his sheer power, grabbed Sita by her hair, and dragged her screaming to his flying chariot. As the Pushpaka Vimana rose into the sky, he flew south across the mountains and plains of India, towards his island fortress, a goddess abducted by a demon, her cries echoing unheard by her husband far below. This act, the abduction of Sita, was the point of no return. It was more than a kidnapping. It was a profound act of adharma, a flagrant and arrogant violation of the most sacred cosmic laws. It was a direct challenge to righteousness itself, a challenge that would have to be answered. By stealing Sita, Ravana had not merely captured a woman. He had personally invited his own destruction. For Rama, the mortal prince he had so easily dismissed, was no mere man. He was the 7th avatar of the great god Vishnu, the preserver, incarnated on earth for the specific purpose of exploiting the loophole in Ravana's boon and ending his reign of terror. The abduction of Sita set in motion the Great Lanka War, an epic confrontation that would pit the forces of Dharma, led by a human prince and his army of divine monkeymen, against the might of the Rakshasa Empire. It was a war that would see the death of Ravana's greatest warriors, his sons, his brothers, and millions of his subjects. His golden city would be besieged and burned, his power shattered, and his pride brought low. The story of Ravana is therefore the ultimate cautionary tale. He was not a simple monster born of evil, but a great being learned, powerful, and pious who was utterly destroyed by his own internal demons. His pride made him believe he was above consequences. His desire made him commit an unforgivable crime. He engineered his own magnificent and terrible downfall, proving that no amount of power, intellect, or devotion can save a soul that has been consumed by its own hubris. A king like Ravana, a being of such monumental pride and power, does not rule or fight alone. The grand tragedy of the Rakshasa sovereign is not a solitary drama. It is a dynastic catastrophe, a story whose sorrow is magnified and made more complex by the fates of his kin. They were a family of immense power, a collection of beings whose own stories of loyalty, morality, and doom are woven so tightly into the fabric of the epic that to separate them is to misunderstand the whole. They were not mere extensions of Ravana's will but distinct individuals, each a giant in their own right, each forced to confront the oncoming storm of war with their own sense of duty, dread, and ultimately tragic destiny. To understand the fall of the house of Ravana, we must know his family. First among them was Kumbhakarna, Ravana's younger brother. His name alone inspired terror, For he was a giant of such colossal size and strength that the very earth was said to tremble when he walked. Yet, the story of Kumbhakarna is perhaps the most profound tragedy of loyalty in the entire epic. He was not a being of inherent malice. In many ways, he was a virtuous soul trapped in a monstrous body and bound by a cruel fate. Like his brothers, Kumbhakarna performed severe penances to the creator god, Brahma, seeking immense power. His potential was so great that the Devas themselves trembled in fear. They knew that if he were to be granted his heart's desire, which was nirdavatvam, the utter annihilation of the gods, the cosmic order would be undone. In their desperation, they pleaded with Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and speech, to intervene. As the colossal Rakshasa stood before Brahma, ready to utter his request, the goddess entered his mind and subtly twisted his tongue. And so, instead of asking for the power to destroy the gods, he asked for Nidravatvamth, boon of eternal sleep. Ravana, aghast at this turn of events, pleaded with Brahma to amend the curse. Brahma, taking pity, modified the boon. Kumbhakarna would not sleep forever, but would slumber for 6 months at a time, and would be awake for only a single day before falling back into his profound hibernation. This curse defined him. He was a being of immense wisdom and might, known for his righteous counsel when he was awake, but rendered almost entirely inert by a cruel twist of divine fate. His life was a frustrating cycle of deep sleep punctuated by brief, furious moments of consciousness. When Ravana, consumed by his obsession, brought the abducted Sita to Lanka, he plunged his kingdom into a crisis. As Rama's assembling army of Vanaras became known, Ravana convened a war council. He ordered that his giant brother be awakened for his council. The task was monumental. An army of Rakshasas was dispatched to Kumbhakarna's cavernous chambers. They beat giant war drums that shattered stone. They drove herds of screaming elephants over his body. They shouted and prodded him with massive spears, all to no avail. Only after 1,000 elephants had walked across his chest did the giant finally stir. His colossal yawn like a hurricane in the chamber. Brought before Ravana, and informed of the reason for the impending war, Kumbhakarna was horrified. His wisdom, unclouded by the ego that afflicted his brother, saw the truth immediately. He delivered a powerful and damning indictment of Ravana's actions. He declared the abduction of Sita to be a heinous act of adharma, a stain upon their lineage, and an open invitation to ruin. He passionately argued that Ravana's lust and pride would be the downfall of their entire race and the beautiful city of Lanka. He pleaded with his brother to return Sita with honor and beg for Rama's forgiveness, as this was the only path to avert catastrophe. Ravana responded not with contemplation, but with fury. He accused his brother of cowardice and disloyalty, his pride unable to stomach such a rebuke. Stung by the accusation and bound by an unbreakable bond of fraternal love, Kumbhakarna made his tragic choice. Though he knew the cause was unjust, though he knew he was marching toward certain death in defense of his brother's sin, his loyalty to his blood and his king overrode his own moral judgment. He would fight. With a somber resignation, he drank vats of liquor and feasted on mountains of meat, preparing for battle. His entrance onto the battlefield was an apocalyptic event. He was a walking mountain of destruction, swatting away Van-era soldiers by the thousands, grabbing them in his massive fists and stuffing them into his cavernous mouth. He was unstoppable, a force of nature that shattered the morale of Rama's army. But in the end he came face to face with Rama himself. After a titanic struggle, Rama unleashed a series of celestial weapons, severing the giant's limbs and finally, his head. Kumbhakarna fell. A noble soul who chose to die for his kin rather than live with the dishonor of abandoning them in their darkest hour. His tragedy is the eternal conflict of duty versus morality, of a loyal heart chained to a wicked cause. Then there was Vibhishana, the youngest of the 3 Rakshasa brothers. and a figure who stands as one of the most complex moral actors in the epic. If Ravana embodied Rajasic ambition and Kumbhakarna tamasic loyalty, then Vibhishana was miraculously a being of sattvic purity, a righteous soul born into a race of monsters. He was a devout follower of Dharma from his very core, and his entire existence served as a moral compass pointing true north, even in the heart of a kingdom spiraling into darkness. From the very moment Ravana paraded his captive Sita in the courts of Lanka, Vibhishana was his staunchest and most vocal opponent. While others celebrated the prize, Vibhishana saw only the sin. He repeatedly and publicly begged his brother to release her, not with the resigned sorrow of Kumbhakarna, but with the fire of a true devotee of righteousness. He warned Ravana that this single act of adharma was a poison that would corrupt everything they had built, bringing ruin upon their people, their kingdom, and their very name. For his counsel, he was rewarded with scorn. Ravana, whose ego could not tolerate dissent, viewed his brother's morality as weakness and his warnings as treason. In a final furious council meeting, after Vibhishana made one last desperate plea for peace and righteousness, Ravana exploded. He publicly denounced his younger brother, calling him a traitor and a coward, unworthy of the Rakshasa name. He verbally disowned and banished him from Lanka, an act of supreme arrogance. Cast out and alone, Vibhishana faced the most profound choice of his life. Where did his ultimate loyalty lie? With his blood, his family, his people, and his home, all of which were now bound to a path of sin? Or with the universal eternal law of Dharma? He made a decision that has been debated for centuries. He chose Dharma. Believing that righteousness must supersede all other loyalties, he flew across the ocean and sought asylum in Rama's camp. The Vanaras naturally were deeply suspicious. The brother of their mortal enemy appearing in their midst seemed like an obvious trick, a Rakshasa deception. But Rama, the embodiment of Dharma himself, recognized the purity in Vibhishana's heart and accepted him. This act of defection was a devastating blow to Lanka and a monumental boon for Rama. Vibhishana was not just a refugee. He was a master key to the fortress. He possessed an intimate knowledge of Lanka's fortifications, its military chain of command, its secret passages, and the unique powers and weaknesses of its greatest warriors. He became Rama's most crucial advisor, guiding the campaign with his insider knowledge. It was Vibhishana who revealed the secret rituals of Ravana's son, and in the final climactic battle, it was he who told Rama the fatal secret to killing his own brother. That Ravana, having stored a pot of immortal nectar in his navel, could only be killed by a divine arrow aimed at that specific spot. After Ravana fell and the war was won, Rama honored his promise and crowned Vibhishana as the new king of a broken and mourning Lanka. He ruled for ages as a just and righteous king, yet his story is one of profound sacrifice. He gained a kingdom but lost his family. He upheld Dharma but was branded a traitor by his own people. Vibhishana embodies the complex and often painful idea that righteousness is a choice available to all, regardless of their birth, and that sometimes the most virtuous path is also the most lonely one. And then there was Ravana's greatest champion, his perfect son Indrajit, born as Meghanada, meaning the roar of the clouds. He was a prodigy of such immense power that he earned his more famous name, Indrajit, the conqueror of Indra, after he single-handedly defeated the king of the gods in battle and dragged him back to Lanka as a prisoner. He was the crown prince of the Rakshasas, the heir to Ravana's empire, and arguably the most formidable single warrior in the entire epic. Indrajit was the ultimate warrior-sorcerer. He had mastered the arts of Maya to a degree that even surpassed his father, and he was the possessor of the most powerful celestial weapons, the astras, granted to him by the gods themselves after his victory over them. He was fiercely loyal to his father and his kingdom, and when he entered the war, the tide turned dramatically. He was a phantom of death. Using his powers of illusion, He could render himself, his chariot and his entire legion invisible. He would fly through the sky unseen, unheard, raining down a storm of magical arrows and divine weapons that decimated Rama's army. Twice he defeated both Rama and his brother Lakshmana, leaving them for dead on the battlefield, bound by magical weapons like the Nagapasha, a twisting snare of 1,000,000 venomous serpents. Both times, only divine intervention could save the heroes from his power. Indrajit's near invincibility came from a secret source, a sacred ritual, the Nikumbala Yagna, which he would perform before major battles. If he could complete this sacrificial fire ceremony to his tutelary goddess, he would be granted a chariot from which he would be utterly unbeatable for a day. The key to defeating him was to interrupt this ritual. And who else but Vibhishana, his own uncle, knew this secret? Guided by Vibhishana, Lakshmana launched a surprise attack on the sacred grove where Indrajit was performing his ritual. Forced to fight before his ceremony was complete, Indrajit was finally vulnerable. What followed was one of the most ferocious duels in the Ramayana, a battle between two of the epic's greatest heroes. For 3 days and 3 nights, Lakshmana and Indrajit fought, unleashing the full arsenal of their divine weaponry. In the end, using a celestial arrow given to him by Indra himself, Lakshmana beheaded the Rakshasa prince. The death of Indrajit was the death knell for Lanka. It shattered the morale of the Rakshasa army and broke Ravana's heart. He had lost his invincible son, the future of his dynasty, all because of his own stubborn pride. Indrajit stands as a tragic figure of a loyal son doomed by the sins of his father, the best and brightest of a new generation sacrificed for an old king's folly. Finally, we must speak of the catalyst, the spark that ignited this entire inferno of war and death. Surpanaka, Ravana's sister. Her story is a dark opera of spurned desire, brutal humiliation, and horrific revenge. Living in the forests of mainland India, she encountered Rama and was instantly consumed by lust for the handsome prince. Using her Rakshasi power of Kamarupa, she transformed herself into a beautiful woman and brazenly proposed marriage. Rama, ever faithful to Sita, politely refused and playfully suggested she try his brother. Lakshmana, in turn, also rejected her, but with cruel mockery. Humiliated and enraged, Surpanaka's desire curdled into pure hatred. She saw Sita as the sole obstacle to her happiness, the reason for her rejection. Reverting to her true monstrous Rakshasi form, she lunged, her claws outstretched, intending to devour Sita on the spot. To protect his sister-in-law, Lakshmana acted with swift and shocking brutality. He drew his sword and sliced off Surpanaka's nose and ears. Screaming in agony and incandescent with fury, Surpanaka flew to her brother Ravana's court. But she was more than just a victim seeking solace. She was a master manipulator. She presented her mutilated face as evidence of the insult to their royal bloodline. But more importantly, she skillfully used her humiliation to ignite Ravana's own fatal flaws. She painted a glowing, irresistible portrait of Sita's divine beauty, framing her not just as a woman, but as a prize worthy only of the greatest king in the world. She stoked his ego, questioned his power, and dared him to let such an insult go unanswered. It was her goading, her tale of beauty and humiliation, that pushed Ravana over the edge and convinced him to commit his fatal act of abduction. A single violent encounter, born from one Rakshasi's spurned desire, spiraled into a war that would end an age. Thus, the tragedy of Ravana is the tragedy of his entire house. A sleeping giant forced to fight for a cause he knew was wrong. A righteous brother forced to betray his family to uphold the law. A perfect son doomed to die for his father's sins. And a vengeful sister whose wounded pride set the world on fire. Together, their stories transform the Ramayana from a simple tale of good versus evil into a complex, heartbreaking, and epic family tragedy. While the Ramayana presents the grand dynastic tragedy of the Rakshasa cohesive and powerful empire, locked in a cosmic war with the forces of Dharma, the other great pillar of Hindu epic literature. The Mahabharata portrays these beings through a different, more primal lens. Here, the Rakshasas are not often the architects of a world-spanning conflict. Instead, they are the echoes of a wilder, more ancient world, haunting the deep forests that lie just beyond the borders of human civilization. They are localized terrors, primal forces of nature, and in some of the most compelling narratives, they become figures who are deeply, even intimately, entwined with the lineages of human heroes, further blurring the already faint line between monster and man. If the Rakshasas of Lanka were a sophisticated, urbanized evil, the Rakshasas of the Mahabharata are the raw, untamed chaos of the wilderness itself. Their stories are less about dynastic pride and more about survival, hunger, love, and loyalty, creating a complex and fascinating counterpoint to the grand opera of Ravana. Our first tale unfolds in the darkest period of the Pandava brothers' lives. Having escaped a failed assassination attempt by their treacherous cousins, an attempt that saw them fleeing a burning palace made of lacquer, the 5 heroes and their mother, Kunti, are now fugitives. Exiled and believed dead, they journey through an immense, forbidding forest, a place where the laws of men hold no sway. This forest was the domain of a Rakshasa, a creature of terrifying power and insatiable appetite named Hidimba. Hidimba was a cannibal king, a monster who delighted in the taste of human flesh. His senses, like those of all Rakshasas, were preternaturally sharp. From his lair deep within the woods, he caught the scent of the sleeping Pandavas, scent of mortals, potent and delicious. Salivating at the prospect of such a grand feast, he turned to his sister, Hidimbai. He commanded her to use her Rakshasi wiles to lure the humans into a trap so that he could devour them. Hidimbai, bound by duty to her powerful and violent brother, obeyed. She approached the Pandava encampment, her form likely monstrous and terrifying. But as she drew closer, she saw the scene. 4 brothers and their mother sleeping soundly, exhausted from their ordeal, while one magnificent figure stood guard. This was the second Pandava brother, the mighty Bhima, a man whose physique was legendary, whose arms were like tree trunks, and whose chest was as broad as a mountain ledge. As Hidimbai gazed upon Bhima's heroic stature, and the noble aura that surrounded him even in the dim light of the forest, something shifted within her. It was a moment of profound transformation, not of body but of heart. She was overcome not with hunger but with love. In an instant she was captivated, her Rakshasi heart utterly smitten with this mortal hero. She was now torn between her fearsome duty to her brother and this powerful unexpected emotion. She chose love. Calling upon her innate power of Kamarupa, she shed her monstrous form. Her grotesque features dissolved, replaced by the form of a woman of breathtaking, celestial beauty. She approached Bhima, her voice soft, her demeanor gentle. She introduced herself, confessed her love for him at first sight, and then, risking her own life, she revealed her true identity and her brother's horrific plan. She warned Bhima of the mortal danger his family was in and begged him to flee with her. Bhima, a warrior of unwavering principle, refused. He would not abandon his sleeping family, nor would he flee from any threat. As they argued, the impatient Hidimba, enraged by his sister's long delay and her betrayal, arrived on the scene. His appearance was monstrous. He was a giant of a creature, his eyes burning with fury, his tusks bared in a snarl as he saw his sister conversing with their intended meal. He roared, accusing Hidimbai of treachery and lunging to kill her. Bhima intervened, stepping between the monster and his sister. "Hold!" he commanded, his voice booming through the forest. "It is I who will kill you." A tremendous duel erupted. The battle between the son of the wind god and the cannibal king of the forest was a clash of titans. They uprooted massive sal trees, wielding them like clubs, shattering them against one another. The forest floor trembled with the force of their wrestling, their roars shaking the leaves from the branches. For hours they fought, a battle of raw, primal strength, but in the end the heroic power of Bhima proved superior. He seized the Rakshasa, lifted him high, and with a mighty effort broke his back, silencing the terror of the forest forever. The battle over, Hidimbai, now free from her terrifying brother, approached the Pandavas and their newly awakened mother, Kunti. She fell at Kunti's feet and with tears of genuine devotion, begged to be allowed to marry Bhima. At first, the Pandavas were reluctant, but Kunti, a woman of great wisdom and foresight, saw the truth of Hidimbai's love. She also understood the value of having a powerful supernatural ally during their perilous exile. She persuaded Bhima to accept Hidimbai as his wife, on the condition that once she had borne him a son, he would be free to continue his journey with his family. This union is a landmark event. It is a willing marriage between a premier human hero and a Rakshasi, a merging of two worlds. It is a testament to the idea that the heart of a Rakshasi can be as pure and devoted as any human's, and it sets the stage for the birth of one of the Mahabharata's greatest tragic heroes. From the union of Bhima and Hidimbai, a son was born. This was no ordinary birth. The child emerged fully grown, a powerful youth, bald and shaped like a gada, or water pot, for which he was named Gatotkacha. He was a being of immense and unique power, a perfect synthesis of his parentage. From his mother, he inherited the supernatural abilities of the Rakshasas. He could fly, change his size at will, and wield the terrifying power of Maya, or illusion. From his father he inherited the prodigious, earth-shaking strength of the Pandavas. Though he and his mother departed to rule over Hidimba's former kingdom of forest-dwelling Rakshasas, Gatotkacha swore a solemn and unbreakable oath to his father. He promised that whenever the Pandavas had need of him, they had only to think of him, and he would appear instantly to serve their cause. For many years that need did not arise. But then came the great, cataclysmic Kurukshetra war, the apocalyptic battle between the Pandavas and their 100 Kaurava cousins. The Pandavas, though righteous, were outnumbered. Their divine strategist, the god Krishna, advised them to summon every ally they could. And so Bhima called upon his son. Gatotkacha's arrival in the Pandava camp was a major turning point. He was not just a single warrior. He brought with him a legion of Rakshasa warriors, a demonic army that fought with illusion and ferocity. Throughout the war he was one of the Pandavas' most devastating champions, a force of chaos and terror that the disciplined armies of the Kauravas could not counter. His finest and final hour came on the 14th night of the war. After a devastating day of fighting, the battle did not cease with the sunset. It continued into the darkness, and the night belonged to the Rakshasas. As darkness fell, Gatotkacha's powers swelled to their absolute peak. He became an unstoppable force of destruction. He used his Maya to create terrifying illusions, making the Kaurava soldiers see phantom monsters and attack each other in fear. He became invisible, raining down rocks and weapons from the sky. He enlarged his body to a mountainous size, crushing chariots and elephants under his feet. He single-handedly held off the greatest Kaurava heroes, and was systematically annihilating their army. The Kaurava commander, Duryodhana, watched in horror as his forces dissolved into chaos. In desperation he ran to his greatest warrior, the tragic hero Karna. He begged Karna to use his ultimate weapon, the one weapon that could not fail, the Indrastra Shakti. This was a divine dart, a gift from the god Indra that was infallible. It could only be used once, and once launched it would kill its target without fail. Karna had been saving this weapon for one purpose and one purpose only: to kill his hated arch-rival Arjuna, the linchpin of the Pandava army. To use it on Gatotkacha would be to throw away his one certain chance of victory over Arjuna. At first Karna refused, but as Gatotkacha's rampage grew ever more destructive, and the entire Kaurava army faced annihilation, Karna knew he had no choice. To save his army from the immediate threat, he had to sacrifice his ultimate goal. With a heavy heart, he invoked the divine weapon. The sky lit up as the Shakti flew from his hands, a blazing spear of light that streaked across the dark battlefield and struck the mighty Gatotkacha square in the chest. Knowing his end had come, the half-Rakshasa hero made one final monumental sacrifice for the father he loved. As the divine energy consumed him, he used the last of his will to swell his body to its maximum possible size. He became a living mountain falling from the sky. He deliberately positioned his fall over the Kaurava legions, and in his death, he crushed an entire division in Akshahini of thousands of soldiers, chariots, and elephants. The Pandava camp erupted in grief. But as they mourned their fallen champion, Krishna smiled. He explained to a grieving Arjuna that Gatotkacha's death was the ultimate sacrifice. By forcing Karna to use his infallible weapon, Gatotkacha had effectively saved Arjuna's life. He had disarmed the Pandavas' greatest threat, ensuring their eventual victory. The story of Gatotkacha is the epic's most powerful statement on the nature of the Rakshasa. It shows that a being of demonic blood can be the noblest of heroes, whose loyalty and willing sacrifice were absolutely essential for the ultimate triumph of Dharma. Not all encounters with Rakshasas in the Mahabharata are so grand or so interwoven with the fate of empires. Some tales show them in their more classical role as localized monsters, bullies who plague the innocent, and whose defeat is a measure of a hero's duty to protect the common folk. Such is the tale of Bakasura, the crane demon. During another period of their exile, the Pandavas and Kunti took refuge in the guise of poor Brahmins in the village of Ekachakra. They soon discovered that a palpable sense of terror hung over the town. The villagers were being preyed upon by Bakasura, a ravenous Rakshasa who lived in a nearby cave. To prevent the monster from simply emerging and eating them all at random, the village had struck a dreadful pact with him. Every week, the villagers were to deliver a massive cartload of food, rice, curds, and other provisions pulled by 2 buffaloes to the demon's cave. The person who drove the cart was also to be part of the meal. While staying with the poor Brahmin family, Kunti discovered that it was their turn to provide the tribute. She entered their home to find the family weeping, locked in a heart-wrenching debate over which one of them should sacrifice themselves. The father insisted he must go. The mother insisted it was her duty, and their children cried that they should be taken instead. Kunti, moved by their plight and ever mindful of the warrior's duty to protect the defenseless, intervened. She calmly told the family that they would not be sacrificing anyone. Her son Bhima would take the cart to the demon instead. The Brahmin, horrified at the thought of sending a guest to his death, refused, but Kunti was firm, assuring him of Bhima's immense power. And so, Bhima drove the cart to Bakasura's cave. But instead of proceeding with fear, he did so with an air of defiant contempt. He stopped the cart well outside the cave and, to the astonishment of any who might have been watching, he began to calmly and leisurely eat all the food himself. When the enraged Bakasura finally emerged, roaring at the sight of this insolent mortal devouring his tribute, Bhima simply continued eating, not even bothering to look up. This ultimate insult drove the Rakshasa into a mindless fury. A ferocious battle ensued, with Bhima finally turning his attention to the monster. They fought with rocks and trees before Bhima, with his superior strength, seized Bakasura, broke his back over his knee, and dragged his lifeless body to the town gate for all the villagers to see. The reign of terror was over. The story of Bakasura is a more straightforward tale of good versus evil, hero versus monster. It serves to reinforce the role of the Pandavas as protectors of the innocent, and shows the Rakshasa not as a complex tragic figure, but as a blight upon the land that must be cleansed by heroic strength. Together, these stories from the Mahabharata paint a rich and varied portrait of the Rakshasa, a being that can be a lover, a son, a hero, a tyrant, a monster, and a profound echo of the wild, chaotic, and magical world that lies just beyond the firelight. We have walked the battlements of Lanka and trekked through the haunted forests of the Kurukshetra war. We have seen the Rakshasa as a dynastic king and a tribal monster, as a tragic hero and a vengeful catalyst. But to truly grasp the full, terrifying scope of their presence in the Hindu cosmos, we must journey deeper still. We must leave the relative familiarity of the great epics and plunge into the vast, churning ocean of scripture known as the Puranas. Here, in these ancient encyclopedias of lore, cosmology, and philosophy, the Rakshasas and their kin are often presented in their most elemental and terrifying forms. They are not merely adversaries in a single human drama. They are fundamental threats to the cosmic order, beings whose conflicts with the gods define the very nature of existence itself. In these texts, the line between a Rakshasathe chaotic flesh-eater and an Asurath power-seeking rival of the gods often blurs into insignificance. The figures that emerge are terrifying hybrids, possessing the ambition of a fallen god and the monstrous appetite of a primordial demon. They are not just ghouls of the battlefield. They are philosophical ghouls, living embodiments of cosmic principles gone horribly wrong. Perhaps the most infamous and instructive of these primordial tyrants is the great Asura king, Hiranyakashipu. His story, detailed in the Bhagavata Purana, is a chilling dissertation on the corrupting nature of absolute power and the spectacular violence of divine retribution. Hiranyakashipu's entire existence was fueled by a singular, burning hatred for the god Vishnu. This hatred was born from a family tragedy. Vishnu, in his boar avatar Varaha, had slain Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha, to save the earth goddess. Consumed by a desire for vengeance and ultimate power, Hiranyakashipu embarked on a penance so severe it threatened to incinerate the universe. For countless years, he stood on his tiptoes on a mountaintop, his arms raised to the sky, his focus so intense that a divine fire began to emanate from his head, scorching the heavens and terrifying the gods. Finally, the creator Brahma was forced to appear before him. He offered the Asura king any boon he desired. Hiranyakashipu, with cunning and meticulous precision, forged a shield of words, a boon designed to make him functionally immortal. He asked that he should not meet his death from any living entity created by Brahma. He then went further, listing every conceivable duality. He could not be killed by man nor by beast, neither indoors nor outdoors, neither during the day nor at night. He asked for immunity on the ground and in the sky, and from any weapon whether animate or inanimate. Brahma, bound by the law of the boon, had no choice but to grant it. Hiranyakashipu became invincible. He unleashed a reign of terror across the three worlds: heaven, earth, and the nether realms. He overthrew the gods, usurped the throne of Indra, and forced all beings to worship him as the one true God. His ego became a cosmic force, his word the only law. The ultimate tragedy, the fatal crack in his impenetrable armor, came not from an external enemy, but from within his own palace, from his own flesh and blood. His son Prahlada was born a pure and unshakable devotee of the very god his father despised, Vishnu. From his infancy, Prahlada's heart was filled with love for the preserver. This was not just a difference of opinion. It was the ultimate act of defiance, a rebellion in his own home. Hiranyakashipu was incandescent with fury. He could not tolerate this. He commanded his son to renounce Vishnu and worship him alone. Prahlada, with a serene and maddening calm, refused. This began one of the most horrific campaigns of torture in mythology. Hiranyakashipu resolved to murder his own child, to prove that his power was greater than Prahlada's faith. He had the boy thrown off cliffs, but Prahlada landed as if on a pillow of air. He had him trampled by war elephants, but their tusks shattered against his skin. He had him thrown into pits with venomous snakes, who refused to bite him. He had him cast into a roaring fire while sitting on the lap of his demonic aunt, Holika, who herself had a boon of fire immunity. But the boon only worked if she entered the fire alone. She was consumed by the flames while Prahlada sat peacefully, chanting Vishnu's name. Each failed attempt only deepened Prahlada's devotion and his father's maniacal rage. In a final furious confrontation in the grand hall of his palace, Hiranyakashipu, his eyes blazing with madness, strode towards his son. He pointed a finger at a massive stone pillar supporting the roof and roared, "You speak of your omnipresent Vishnu. You say he is everywhere. If he is everywhere, is he in this pillar?" Prahlada, his faith absolute, replied calmly, "Yes, father. He is." "Then I shall kill him and you along with him," screamed Hiranyakashipu, and with a furious cry, he swung his massive mace and shattered the pillar into 1,000 pieces. From the heart of the broken pillar erupted a sound that was not of this world, a deafening, terrifying roar that shook the foundations of the palace and the cosmos itself. And from the dust and rubble, a form emerged, a being of impossible terror, an avatar specifically designed to be the loophole in a demon's prayer. It was Vishnu, but in his most terrifying manifestation, Narasimha, the man-lion. This avatar was the perfect, brutal answer to Hiranyakashipu's boon. Narasimha was neither man nor beast. He seized the screaming Asura king and dragged him to the threshold of the palace doorway, a space that was neither indoors nor outdoors. He did this at the moment of twilight, the cusp between day and night. He then placed the struggling demon king upon his lap, which was neither the ground nor the sky. And then, with a final terrifying roar, Narasimha used not a forged weapon, but his own sharp divine claws, and tore Hiranyakashipu asunder, disemboweling him. Every clause of the boon was met. Every loophole was closed. Divine justice was delivered in a maelstrom of visceral righteous violence. The story is a graphic and powerful illustration of the self-destructive nature of ego, and the profound horror of a father so consumed by his own perceived divinity that he becomes a monster to his own child. Not all primordial terrors are born of ego. Some are born of a horrifying, perverted biology, a nightmarish power of propagation that threatens to overwhelm all opposition through sheer numbers. Such is the tale of Raktabija, whose name is a chillingly literal description of his power. It means blood seed. Raktabija was a powerful Asura general, a key champion in the great wars against the Devas. He had been granted a unique and seemingly unbeatable boon. Every single drop of his blood that touched the earth would not simply stain the ground. It would instantly spring up as a perfect, fully grown clone of himself, armed, enraged, and ready for battle. When the great goddess Durga waged her epic war against the Asura armies, she found herself facing this impossible foe. She was a warrior of supreme power, but her very strength became her enemy's greatest asset. She would wound Raktabija with her sword, and 100 new Raktabijas would spring from the flowing blood. She would pierce him with arrows, and thousands more would sprout from the crimson rain. The battlefield became a churning sea of identical demons, a self-replicating plague of violence. The more she fought, the larger his army grew. It was a war she could not win through conventional means. In a moment of divine desperation and cosmic fury, Durga's third eye blazed open, her brow furrowed, and from the fire of her righteous anger, a new terrifying goddess manifested, springing forth fully formed. This was Kali, the Dark Mother, the embodiment of time, destruction, and untamed primal energy. She was a terrifying sight, with dark, emaciated skin, a necklace of freshly severed heads, a skirt of human arms, and a long blood-red tongue lolling from her mouth. She was the universe's ultimate weapon, a horrifying solution for a horrifying problem. Kali charged into the fray, letting out a shriek that sundered the heavens. A new strategy was deployed. As Durga and her celestial attendants wounded Raktabija, Kali followed in their wake. Before a single drop of his potent blood could touch the sacred earth, she stretched out her massive tongue and drank it. She lapped up the blood from his wounds, catching the spray in midair, ensuring that not one blood seed could be planted. Starved of his power to replicate, the original Raktabija was suddenly isolated, vulnerable, and mortal. With a final swift stroke, the goddess beheaded him. Kali then proceeded to devour his clone army, her hunger as vast as the battlefield itself. The myth of Raktabija is a visceral and powerful allegory for problems that multiply when attacked directly, like negative thoughts, addictions, or destructive desires, and a profound lesson that some horrors are so overwhelming they can only be vanquished by embracing an even more terrifying, radical force of destruction. From the cosmic battlefield, we now shrink our focus to a single horrifying act of intimate terror. This is the tale of Putana, a Rakshasi whose story preys upon our most sacred bonds and vulnerabilities. She is not a threat to the cosmic order, but to the sanctity of the nursery, a monster whose horror is made all the more potent by its insidious personal nature. When the god Krishna was born as an infant in the village of Gokul, the evil king Kamsa, his uncle, learned of a prophecy that this child would be his doom. Kamsa unleashed a wave of demonic assassins to kill the infant god, and the most insidious of these was the Rakshasi Putana. She was a specialist, a killer of infants known throughout the land as a night terror to new mothers. Putana did not approach the village as a monster. She used her power of Kamarupa to disguise herself as a breathtakingly beautiful woman, a wandering ascetic filled with grace and love. She entered the village of Gokul, and the simple villagers were charmed by her divine appearance. She made her way to the home where the infant Krishna was being raised, and she offered to do what any loving woman would do for a beautiful child. She offered to breastfeed him. Krishna's foster mother, Yashoda, completely deceived by the disguise and the apparent devotion of the visitor, handed her precious child over. But Putana's heart was full of murder. She had coated her breasts with a deadly, fast-acting poison, a halahala so potent it could kill a grown man in an instant, let alone a newborn. As she held the divine infant to her chest, she smiled, anticipating her victory. But this was no ordinary infant. As Putana began to nurse him, the baby Krishna did not just drink the poisoned milk. He began to suck. And he sucked not just the poison, but the very life force, the prana, from the Rakshasi's body. A look of confusion crossed Putana's beautiful face, which quickly contorted into a mask of agony. She tried to pull the child away, but he clung to her with divine strength, relentlessly draining her vitality. She let out a scream of pure, unearthly pain, a sound that ripped through the village. Her beautiful illusion shattered like glass. Her body began to swell and contort, reverting to her true, colossal, and hideous demonic form. She crashed through the roof of the house, trying desperately to flee, but the infant god would not let go until he had drained the very last of her life. Her massive, monstrous corpse fell to the ground outside the village, so large that it took the villagers days to dismember and cremate it. The story of Putana is chilling, a grotesque violation of the most sacred maternal act. It is a nightmare that weaponizes nurture itself. Yet, in true Puranic fashion, the story does not end there. In a final profound twist, it is said that because Putana, despite her murderous intent, had performed the physical act of offering her breast to the god in a motherly gesture, her soul was instantly purified by the divine touch. Her eons of sin were burned away, and she was granted moksha, or liberation, the ultimate goal of any soul. It is a testament to the Hindu concept of boundless divine grace, but it does nothing to diminish the sheer, intimate horror of her Akshyansa philosophical ghoul, who reminds us that the most terrifying monsters are often the ones who come to us in the most beautiful and trusted forms. We have journeyed through the cosmic dawn and witnessed a creation born from a god's fatigue. We have dissected the anatomy of a nightmare, cataloging the powers of illusion and flesh-rending fury. We have stood in the golden court of Lanka and watched a great king's hubris engineer his own magnificent downfall. We have wept for his doomed family. We have trekked through the primeval forests of another epic and listened to the echoes of heroes and monsters. We have confronted the primordial terrors that challenged the gods themselves. And now, having traversed these epic landscapes of blood and tragedy, we must ask the ultimate question: the one that underpins this entire exploration. What truly is a Rakshasa? To answer this by simply translating the word as demon is a profound disservice, an intellectual surrender to the poverty of a single word. To equate them with the fiends and fallen angels of Western Abrahamic lore is to miss the point entirely. Rakshasas are not external agents of evil from some subterranean hell, invading a pure world to tempt and corrupt it. In the grand cyclical cosmology of Hinduism, they are something far more intimate, far more complex, and therefore far more terrifying. They are an intrinsic part of the cosmic order itself, a necessary shadow to the divine light, a fundamental force woven into the very fabric of existence. They are the philosophical ghoul. To understand their place, we must understand the engine of Hindu cosmology, the three gunas, or the fundamental qualities that permeate all of creation. Every being, every object, every thought is a unique blend of these three forces. First, there is sattva, the quality of purity, harmony, balance, light, and goodness. It is the force of order, of wisdom, of spiritual truth. The devas, the shining gods, are the beings most imbued with sattva. It is the quality that the righteous Vibhishana chose to embody. Second, there is rajas, the quality of passion, energy, action, ambition, and change. It is the force of movement, of creation and conflict, of desire and ego. Humanity is considered to be primarily rajasic, driven by our goals, our passions, and our striving. The magnificent, tragic ambition of Ravana was a perfect, if terrifying, expression of rajas run rampant, his 10 heads a symbol of his tenfold desires. And third, there is tamas, the quality of darkness, inertia, chaos, ignorance, and decay. It is the force of entropy, of laziness, of delusion, and of destruction. And it is here, in this cosmic principle of darkness and chaos, that the Rakshasa finds its philosophical home. The Rakshasas are the ultimate personification of tamas. They represent the universe's inherent tendency towards disorder. They are the embodiment of that gravitational pull towards ignorance, violence, and disintegration. This is why their primary attributes are what they are. Their shapeshifting is the chaos of formlessness defying the order of stable identity. Their mastery of Maya is the triumph of delusion over truth. Their cannibalism is the ultimate act of entropy, breaking down the complex, sacred form of a human being into base sustenance. They are not evil simply because they choose to be. They are the living manifestation of a fundamental cosmic force. They are a law of nature as much as they are a race of beings. Because of this, their stories transcend simple monster tales and become profound allegories for the struggles that rage within the human mind. The Rakshasa is not just a creature that lurks in the forest. It is the monster that lurks within the labyrinth of our own consciousness. The tale of Ravana is the quintessential warning against ahamkara, the ego. It is the story of how even the most brilliant mind, the most powerful will, and the most profound devotion can be utterly poisoned and destroyed by pride. Ravana mastered the scriptures, but he missed their point. He worshipped a god, but he sought to become one himself. He had everything a being could desire, yet it was not enough because his ego demanded he possess that which he could not have. He is the shadow self of every ambitious individual, a timeless reminder that our greatest strengths, when yoked to an unchecked ego, will inevitably forge the weapons of our own destruction. The battle against the blood-seed demon, Raktabija, is a visceral metaphor for confronting the proliferating demons within our own psyche. Think of a single angry thought, a seed of jealousy or a moment of greed. If you strike at it with unfocused rage, what happens? It multiplies. The anger creates more reasons to be angry. The jealousy finds more evidence to support itself. You are wounded by the conflict, and from your own spilt energy, 1,000 more identical demons spring forth. The myth tells us that such problems cannot be defeated by conventional means. They require a radical, terrifying intervention, a Kali-like act of absolute, conscious awareness that consumes the poison before it can touch the ground and replicate. a fierce discipline that starves the inner demons of the very energy they feed upon. Even the intimate horror of Put-Anna is a philosophical ghoul. She is the allegory of poison disguised as nectar, of destruction disguised as nurture. She is the sweet-sounding advice that leads to ruin, the comforting ideology that is secretly toxic, the relationship that feels like salvation, but is actually draining the life from you. She is a warning that the most dangerous threats are often the ones we willingly invite into our most vulnerable spaces. On another level, the Rakshasas represented deep, ecological and historical tragedy, the conflict between the wild, untamed world and the relentless march of organized civilization. In both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the Rakshasas are overwhelmingly creatures of the wilderness. They are Vinakaras, forest dwellers. Their kingdoms are in deep forests, on remote mountains, or on islands separated from the mainland. They are forces of the primordial untamed earth. The heroes they often face: Rama, the Pandavasar princes of cities, founders of kingdoms, representatives of a structured, agrarian, law-based society. They are agents of Dharma, which is also the principle of order. When Rama ventures into the Dandaka forest, he is bringing the order of his civilized world into the chaotic domain of the Rakshasas. The conflict that ensues is not just good versus evil. It can be read as the violent, tragic clash between two ways of life. The Rakshasas, in this light, become the monstrous, ferocious defenders of a primordial world, fighting a losing battle against the axes and laws of a new human era. Their monstrosity becomes the fury of a dying world. There roars the last echoes of a wildness being pushed to the brink of extinction. And yet, after all this, after defining them as forces of chaos, as allegories for our inner demons, as tragic defenders of a lost world, the Hindu tradition delivers its most profound and brilliant philosophical masterstroke. It declares that none of this matters as much as the power of a single choice. The Rakshasas are not universally condemned. Their tamasic nature is their inclination, not their destiny. The existence of figures like the righteous Vibhishana shatters any notion of biological or racial determinism. He was born a Rakshasa, brother to the two most powerful demons of his age, raised in a palace where adharma was state policy. Yet he saw the truth. He chose Dharma. He chose it over his king, over his people, and over his own brother. His story is a powerful testament that righteousness is not a matter of birthright, but of individual moral clarity. And what of Ghatotkacha, the half-blood hero, a being who could have used his formidable demonic powers for his own selfish gain, but instead chose to become the loyal son and the ultimate sacrificial champion for a righteous cause? His Rakshasa heritage was not a curse to be overcome, but a source of power to be wielded in the service of Dharma. This moral complexity is what elevates the Rakshasa from a mere monster into an enduringly fascinating philosophical concept. They are not a simple evil to be vanquished, but a complex darkness to be understood. For they force us to confront the most uncomfortable of truths. They are a dark mirror. When we look at Ravana's pride, we are forced to see the seeds of it in ourselves. When we see Hidimba's savagery, we must acknowledge the beast that can stir in our own hearts. When we see Surpanaka's vengeful rage, we must recognize the sting of our own wounded ego. The Rakshasas are the terrifying, shape-shifting horrors of mythology, yes, but their greatest horror lies in their familiarity. They are a reflection of the potential for monstrosity that lies dormant within the human heart. They are the ultimate proof that the greatest battle between order and chaos, between sattva and tamas, between dharma and adharma, is not fought between gods and demons on the fields of Lanka or Kurukshetra. It is fought every single day, in every single moment, within the soul of every living being. The Rakshasas endure, their stories echoing through millennia, not just because they are terrifying, but because they are true. Not true in a literal sense, but true in a deeper philosophical way. They are a testament to a mythological tradition that embraces complexity, that is brave enough to find tragedy in its villains and heroes in its monsters, and that understands that the universe is a grand, terrifying, and beautiful tapestry of both light and shadow. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark heart of Hindu mythology. If you found this exploration of ancient horrors enlightening, and if you believe that these old stories still have profound things to teach us, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to the Eldritch Codex for more deep dives into the lore and philosophies that have shaped our world. We invite you to let us know in the comments below which mythological entity, from any corner of the globe, you would like us to dissect next. Until then, remember that the oldest stories are often the ones that teach us the most about ourselves. They are the maps to the darkest corners of our own minds. Stay curious, stay questioning, and beware the things that walk in the night.